They are not just the central bank of central banks. They are the most powerful financial institution in the world that you have never heard of, and they are hiding a truth about your money that will change the way you see the entire system. This isn't about some basement conspiracy theory. This is about a real physical building in Basel, Switzerland, where the heads of the most powerful central banks, the people who control the money you earn, save, and spend, meet in secret. They coordinate policy, they manage global crises, and they hold a literal physical asset that they tell you is a barbarous relic, but which they secretly value more than anything else. And what they are coordinating right now, what they are preparing for, is the fatal collapse of the world's paper money system. You need to know who they are, how they operate in the shadows, and what they are doing to prepare for the inevitable crisis that is coming for your savings. This is the story of the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS, the gold network that secretly controls nations, and the ticking time bomb they are desperately trying to defuse. The journey starts in Basel, Switzerland. The building is called Zentralbahnplatz 2. It's an 18-story tower, modern, clean, and completely unremarkable. You could walk past it 1,000 times and you would never think twice about what happens inside. But inside that building is an organization with more power than the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, and the International Monetary Fund combined. It is the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS. Think of it like this. Every country has a central bank, right? The Fed in the US, the Bank of England, the ECB, well, the BIS is their club. It is the place where all of those central banks gather to make the decisions that affect billions of people. Every 2 months, the governors of these huge national banks fly to Basel for secret meetings. They have no press, no public minutes, and absolutely no accountability to any single government or taxpayer. This alone is a massive problem. The people who control the value of your currency are making decisions in a total vacuum of scrutiny. But the BIS's power goes deeper than just secret meetings. It goes back to the one physical asset that has endured every single currency collapse in history, gold. The BIS doesn't just manage currencies. It manages the largest gold holdings outside of national reserves. It holds gold on behalf of central banks. It trades gold between nations. It settles international transactions in gold. It has been doing this since 1930, operating beyond the reach of any single government. Now, let's look at the history because that is where the truth gets very dark. The BIS was created right after World War I to handle German reparations, but its real purpose quickly shifted. It became the clearinghouse for gold transactions, the place where central banks could move gold without the public knowing. The most damning, undisputed historical example of this shadowy power comes from World War II. Think about the fighting, the destruction, the millions of lives lost. While soldiers were dying on battlefields, the BIS continued operating. It facilitated gold transactions between the Nazis and the Allies. Let that sink in for a moment. The central bankers on both sides of a global conflict were still doing business through the BIS, trading gold, settling accounts. Why? Because to them, the stability of the global financial system, which they controlled, was more important than the war itself. The BIS accepted gold looted by the Nazis from occupied countries, gold stolen from Jews, from central banks, and the BIs laundered it. They legitimized it and allowed it to flow into the international system. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It is documented history. After the war, there were massive calls to shut down the BIS, to prosecute its officials, but it was protected. Every major power needed it. They needed a neutral place where gold could be moved and managed without public scrutiny. So the BIS survived, and it grew even more powerful. It became the silent foundation of the financial world we live in today. To understand the current crisis that the BIS is trying to manage, we have to talk about the system that was built after the war. The Bretton Woods system. In July 1944, 44 nations gathered in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to design the global financial system. The core promise of that system was simple. The United States would back the dollar with gold at a fixed rate of 35 US dollars per ounce. Other nations would peg their currencies to the dollar. It was meant to be a rock-solid, stable foundation. The official story is that America held most of the world's gold in Fort Knox. But the unofficial, more truthful story is that a massive amount of that gold was held and managed through the Beast Network. Central banks around the world deposited their gold with the BIS for safekeeping and for trading. They didn't want to physically ship huge, heavy gold bars across oceans every time they needed to settle an account. So they kept it in the B system, moving it on paper, on ledgers, invisible to everyone except the central bankers themselves. This created a secret layer of the gold market, a market where prices, quantities, and transactions were totally hidden. And that secrecy gave them catastrophic power. Because if you control gold in secret, you can manipulate its price, its availability, and its role in the financial system. And that is exactly what they did. By the late 1950s, the Bretton Woods system was beginning to crack. The United States was spending far more than it had gold to back up. The Vietnam War, the space race, social programs, all of it was funded by printing dollars. The world started to notice that the official promise of $35 per ounce wasn't aligning with reality. The market price, the price people would actually pay for physical gold, started to creep higher. It hit $40, then $45. The gap was widening, and if it kept widening, the whole system was doomed to collapse, because nations would realize the dollar was no longer truly backed by gold. The promise was becoming a lie. So in 1961, the central banks, led by the U.S., created the London Gold Pool. This was a secret, coordinated effort by 8 nations, the U.S., Britain, France, West Germany, and a few others to manipulate the gold price. This is a critical historical example of deliberate financial control. Here's how the system worked. The banks agreed to coordinate their gold sales to aggressively suppress the market price, forcing it to stay near $35 an ounce. When the demand for gold increased and the price started to rise, they would flood the market by dumping massive amounts of physical gold onto it. This would artificially inflate the supply and drive the price back down. This was not a free market. This was textbook price fixing, and it was managed through the Bank of England with coordination through the BIS in Basel. For 7 long years, they managed to hold the price. Billions of dollars worth of gold flowed out of central bank vaults and into private hands, but the official price stayed locked at $35. They were selling real, physical gold at artificial prices to maintain the illusion that the dollar was still backed by something real. It was a massive financial shell game, a fatal attempt to defy market forces. But they were running out of physical gold. By the mid-1960s, the United States was hemorrhaging its gold reserves. And then one country called the bluff, France. In 1965, Charles de Gaulle, the president of France, looked at the numbers and realized the Americans were lying. He made a move that shattered the system. He ordered the Banque de France to start converting dollars into gold and physically shipping it back to Paris. He literally sent French naval vessels across the Atlantic to collect gold bars from the New York Federal Reserve. Other countries saw this. Germany started converting. Switzerland joined in. The gold was leaving, and the London Gold Pool couldn't stop the financial hemorrhage. In 1968, the pool completely collapsed. The central banks had to admit they could no longer control the gold price. The market price shot up, and the entire Bretton Woods system was exposed as a complete fraud. For 7 years, they had manipulated gold to protect the dollar, and when they could no longer maintain the lie, they had to change the rules entirely. This leads us to the most defining moment in modern financial history, 1971. 3 years after the gold pool's collapse, President Nixon closed the gold window. No more gold backing the dollar. The currency became pure fiat money backed by nothing but the government's promise and trust. Gold was officially demonetized, kicked out of the monetary system. Or, at least that's the story they told you. Here is the secret they have spent the last 50 years hiding. Gold never actually left the system. Central banks still hold thousands of tons of it. The BIS still manages it. They still trade it between themselves. They still use it to settle certain international accounts. The only difference is that they simply don't talk about it anymore. In fact, they work very hard to convince you that gold is irrelevant, just a barbarous relic, a pet rock that only paranoid people buy. But if gold is so irrelevant, why do central banks still hoard it? Did you know the U.S. claims to have over 8,000 tons of gold? That's the largest reserve in the world. Germany has over 3,000 tons. Russia has been aggressively buying for 2 decades and now holds over 2,000 tons. And China? Their official numbers are almost certainly a massive lie, with experts believing their real holdings are much, much higher. All these powerful nations and institutions publicly claim gold doesn't matter. Yet they hold it, they guard it, and they almost never sell it. Why? Because gold is the ultimate reserve. When everything else fails, when paper currencies collapse, when trust completely breaks down, gold is what remains. And they know it. The Bank for International Settlements, or BIS, knows it. This brings us to one of the biggest mysteries of the modern financial world, Fort Knox. It's supposedly where the U.S. stores over 4,000 tons of its gold, guarded by the U.S. Army in Kentucky. The problem? Almost nobody has actually seen it. The last verified public audit of Fort Knox was in 1953. That was over 70 years ago. Since then, the gold has been almost completely off limits. Congressmen have asked to inspect it. Auditors have requested access, all denied. In 1974, a small, hand-picked group of journalists and congressmen were allowed a brief, highly controlled tour. They saw some gold bars and were told everything was fine. No independent audit. No verification of purity, weight, or quantity. Just a simple, clear message. Trust us. The gold is there, but what if it's not? What if some of it was quietly sold off during the London gold pool fiasco to maintain an illusion? What if it was leased out to bullion banks and never returned? This isn't paranoia. It's based on the documented history of what central banks, coordinated by the BIS, have actually done. They secretly manipulated gold for 7 years, lied about the dollar's backing, and slammed the gold window shut when they couldn't maintain the lie anymore. So why would anyone simply believe them now? Here's the most compelling thesis. The gold in Fort Knox, assuming it's all even there, is no longer entirely owned by the United States government. Much of it has been leased, swapped, or pledged as collateral to the BIS network or other central banks. The bars might be in Kentucky, but the legal title, the actual ownership, is incredibly complicated. It's been used in complex financial transactions the public will never see. The reason they can. To allow an audit is simple. It would reveal the clean story America has 8,000 tons of gold is a complete lie. The real story is far messier. Admitting that ownership is split, leased, and encumbered would shatter global confidence in the dollar and trigger the very financial crisis they are trying to prevent. So they don't talk about it, and they don't let anyone look, but the gold empire knows. The central bankers who meet in Basel know exactly where the gold is, who owns it, and how it's being used, and they will never tell you. Let's jump to the modern day because this hidden gold empire is still operating. Since the year 2000, the gold price has been suppressed through something called the paper gold market. This is where the conspiracy gets a digital twist. You can still buy physical gold actual bars and coins, but most gold trading happens entirely on paper. Futures contracts, ETFs, derivatives. When you buy these, you're not buying real gold. You're buying a promise that you could get gold if you wanted it. The beauty of paper gold for the BIS network is that you can create far more of it than physical gold actually exists. Many top analysts believe there are over 100 paper claims on every single ounce of physical gold in the system. Let me repeat that. 100 people hold a piece of paper saying they own the same ounce of gold. This means if everyone who owned paper gold tried to take delivery of the real metal, the entire system would collapse instantly. There simply isn't enough physical gold to cover the promises. But as long as most people just trade paper and never ask for delivery, the illusion holds. When the price of gold starts rising too fast, signaling inflation or dollar weakness, Big bullion banks like JP Morgan and HSBC, who are part of this network, dump massive amounts of paper gold onto the futures market. This floods the market with paper supply, even though not one single physical bar of gold moves. The price drops and the signal is sent. Gold is not a safe haven. The dollar is fine. Everything is under control. This manipulation has been repeatedly documented. Banks get fined small penalties for rigging the market, but the practice continues because it's essential to maintaining confidence in the fiat currencies they control. They have to keep the gold price down. It's the canary in the coal mine for the value of the dollar, and they must smother it. And behind it all, coordinating the flow of real gold between central banks is the BIS. They don't need to manipulate the paper market themselves. They just need to ensure that when someone actually demands physical delivery, the real gold is available to prevent widespread panic. They manage the ultimate backstop, the hidden layer. But what happens when confidence cracks and everyone, nations and citizens alike, demands physical gold at the same time? That's when you find out the empire has been running on fumes. That's when the price of real physical gold completely separates from the price of paper gold, and the people holding paper discover they own nothing but worthless promises. This is why it matters to you. You've been told your entire life that gold is a relic, that it's not real money. But the richest, most powerful institutions in the world, the BIS, central banks, billionaires, are all quietly buying and holding physical gold. Central banks globally are net buyers at levels not seen since the 1960s. They are preparing for something. It's not because they're paranoid. It's because they know the paper system is unsustainable. They know the debt can never be repaid. They know currencies are being inflated into irrelevance. And when the reset comes, when trust breaks, gold will be the only asset that still commands respect. The only asset governments can't print. This hidden gold empire isn't just about hoarding metal, it's about controlling the narrative. If people lose faith in paper money and rush into gold, the price would explode. Governments would lose their ability to print and spend without limit. The entire financial system built on debt would collapse. So they have to suppress gold. They have to convince you it's irrelevant. They have to keep the price controlled so it doesn't signal the truth that the paper currencies are dying. They do this through the BIS network, through paper gold manipulation, and through media narratives that mock gold buyers. But the empire knows the truth, and they are protecting their reserves while telling you to ignore yours. Here is the historical pattern that makes the coming crisis absolutely inevitable. Every major empire that abandoned sound money, that debased its currency, that relied on paper promises, eventually collapsed. Rome, Spain, Great Britain, all of them. And in every single case, gold was the asset that survived. When the Roman denarius became worthless tin, gold still had value. When the British pound collapsed as a reserve currency, gold still settled debts. The pattern is clear. Paper fails. Gold endures. And the people who see it coming, who hold real assets before the collapse, are the ones who preserve their wealth. This hidden gold empire is real. It operates through the BIS. It manages trillions in gold reserves and manipulates prices, all in complete secrecy. You were never meant to know it exists. You were meant to trust the paper, trust the banks, trust the system. But history has shown us over and over that systems built on paper always fail. And when they do, gold is what remains. The empire knows this. That's why they hold it. That's why they hide it. And that is why you must understand its power. To dive deeper into the history of currency crashes, watch this video next. Thanks for watching.